Hyder.
Are you muted, Cynthia?
You're muted.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah.
can.
I'm present.
All right.
Go ahead. Kevin?
Here, I'm here.
All right.
Andrews.
Here.
Phelps.
Here.
Ellis.
Here. We good?
Yes.
Okay. First order of business is approval of the agenda. Everyone receive a copy of the agenda?
Yes.
Is there anyone have an issue with the agenda other than it's long? I hear a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Randy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Kevin? Okay, call the roll.
Mr. Ellis.
Aye.
Phelps.
Aye.
Andrews.
Aye.
Hahn.
Aye.
Hyder.
Aye.
Next item of business is review and approval of the minutes of the April 13th, 2020 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Does anyone have any issues that need to be addressed on the minutes?
I motion to approve the minutes in the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, April 13th, 2020.
Thank you, Brandon. I hear a second.
Second.
Thank you, Cynthia. Call the roll.
Hahn.
Aye.
Ellis.
Aye.
Andrews.
Aye.
Hyder.
Aye.
Phelps.
Aye.
Thank you. We have, moving to the next item, we have 4 public hearings and other business to deal with tonight. I'm going to read an opening statement with respect to the public hearings. The Planning and Zoning Commission holds public hearings as required by law and provides recommendations to City Council on matters relating to land use, planning, zoning, and the subdivision of land. Any person who has an interest in the subject matter of a hearing will have the opportunity to provide testimony and present evidence to the commission during the public hearing. Speakers are required to conduct themselves in an orderly and respectful manner. Disruptive behavior, including applause, yelling, speaking out of turn, or other inappropriate behaviors will not be tolerated. Additionally, the following applies to any person addressing the commission. Speakers are limited to 5 minutes unless otherwise authorized by the chairperson. Speakers must speak when they are approved and speak on camera unless previous arrangements have been made by the chairperson. Speakers must give up their name at the time before they begin their talk. Speakers must begin by stating their name and address. Speakers should speak clearly and so that all can hear on the system. I will announce the subject of the hearing, followed by a report from staff. The chairperson, me, will then open the public hearing to the applicant, followed by those in favor of the application and then those opposed to the application. I will close the public hearing during this time, and the commission will discuss among ourselves the issues that are brought forward in the hearing. The public may not address the commission after the close of the public hearing unless requested or approved by me. The Planning and Zoning Commission shall base its recommendation and/or decision on information and evidence presented during the public hearing. This decision, if required by the application, will be forwarded in writing to City Council for further consideration. Calling the first of the 4 public hearings. That's VACA 20-001, a public hearing and possible vote to recommend the approval of an application to vacate a portion of a water line easement. Karen, will you talk to us about it?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Lester E. Cox Medical Centers, or Cox Health, is requesting an easement vacation of the water line located on Lot 1, Old Stone PDD, to accommodate the proposed building footprint of this location. The proposed replat also dedicates a 15-foot water line easement on the Cox property. Staff has evaluated the request, and the following is a brief analysis of present site conditions as well as the proposal's relationship to adopted plans of the city. The proposal is not anticipated to have any impact on the city's transportation system. The proposal vacates the existing water line and dedicates the water line easement in the revised location. The proposed revised location of the water line easement aligns with a water line easement located on the adjacent property, which is the 60 West property under construction. The proposal is not anticipated to have any impact on areas of floodplain or sinkholes, and the proposal is not anticipated to have any impact on other public services. The Community Development Department recommends approval of the water line easement vacation and the dedication of the new water line easement. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Does anybody have any questions of Karen? If not, let's move to the applicant, if the applicant is present. Is there someone here who's the applicant in this easement matter?
Yes, this is John Williams. I'm with CJW Engineers in Springfield, representing Cox Health, and also J.E. Dunn, who is the general contractor for the Cox Health Clinic. Just a couple of additional tidbits of information I might offer. The water line adjusted route, it runs parallel just south of the current easement. Cox, in fact, does not even need this water main and will not connect to it. The water main is to be run kind of in association with the 60 West development, so that 60 West has fire service in their southwest corner, and it's easier for Cox to run that line for them than it is for 60 West to run a line south from, I guess it's a US 60 highway to that location. So that's kind of a, one guy needs one thing from one guy, and the other guy needs another thing from another guy between Sean Coatney and Cox Health. So there's an access easement that's being worked through with Sean Coatney for Cox, and part of that agreement is that Cox provide this water main for fire service. So that that's pretty much the long and short of it, I guess. And we do have a DNR permit for that. Republic has seen, Garrett Brickner and the city have seen the new water main, adjusted routing, has approved it. And just the other day, I believe Garrett forwarded the MDNR permit for that line as well. So if we can get the easement vacated, we can relocate the water main in a new location.
Okay. Anything else?
Not that I can think of.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Are there any other persons that are in favor of this application that wish to speak? Hearing no one, is there anyone that's opposed to the application that wishes to speak? No one coming forward. I'm going to close the hearing. What do you all say about it?
Move to approve.
Any questions? No questions? Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Be a motion to, let me get the motion to approve the motion to recommend the approval of the application to vacate a portion of a water line easement, as we have discussed with Cox. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Call the roll.
Commissioner Ellis,
Yes.
Commissioner Hyder,
Aye.
Commissioner Andrews,
Aye.
Commissioner Hahn,
Aye.
Commissioner Phelps.
Aye.
Thank you. That'll close that hearing out. Go to our next hearing. Rezone, that's REZN 20-003, public hearing and possible vote to recommend the approval of an application to change the zoning classification of approximately 23.5 acres located at the 7500 block of West Farm Road 174 from agricultural to high-density, single-family residential R1H. Karen?
Thank you, Chairman. The Raider Trust has applied to change the zoning classification of approximately 23.5 acres of property located at the 7500 block of West Farm Road 174 from agricultural to high-density, single-family residential, or R1H. The property does not contain any structures and is currently utilized for agricultural purposes only. During staff's review of the rezoning request, we have reviewed the compliance with the comprehensive plan, including the future land use map. In this case, the flume depicts the subject property as having a low-density residential flume designation. The low-density residential flume designation includes single-family residential development of 1 to 6 units per acre, which does include the R1L, R1M, and R1H, or high-density single-family residential zoning at approximately 6 dwelling units per acre. As far as compatibility with surrounding land uses, the subject property is surrounded by high-density single-family residential to the north, 12 Stones Planned Development District to the west, Greene County Agricultural Zone property to the east, and Greene County suburban residential property to the south. The land uses permitted in the high-density single-family residential zoning district do include single-family dwellings, residential accessory structures, golf courses, country clubs, and schools. We have reviewed the rezoning request as far as our capacity to serve potential development and land use. As far as municipal water and sewer service, the site is not currently served by City of Republic Water or Sanitary Sewer Service. The site is in proximity to a 10-inch water main and 8-inch sanitary sewer main at the eastern termination point of East Timber Oak Street, which is approximately 345 feet from the western boundary line of the subject property. Connections to these mains will require an off-site utility easement and agreement with the owner of the 12 Stones PDD property to the west. The sanitary sewer flows directly to the Shula Creek lift station and then through a forced main back to the wastewater treatment facility. The lift station and treatment facility do currently have capacity for potential development at this location. The city's water system currently also has capacity to serve a potential development. Final evaluations of capacity will be performed during subsequent development review. Alternatives to connecting to different points in the city's municipal water and sewer systems may be available and will be reviewed at the time of development review. As far as transportation, the subject parcel is currently accessible for agricultural purposes only from an access point on West Farm Road 174, from the adjacent property to the east, also owned by the Raider Trust. Subsequent development of the subject parcel will require review of new entrances and/or roads identified on the major thoroughfare plan through the preliminary plating process. The Republic City Code will require the development of the subject property to include the extension of internal public streets to boundary lines, sidewalks, and the construction of Bailey Avenue from West Farm Road 174 to the southern boundary line as required on the major thoroughfare plan, as well as the dedication of deficient right-of-way along West Farm Road 174. A traffic impact study, or TIS, has been completed by the applicant and reviewed by the city. The report indicated no major improvements are needed to the city's existing transportation system at this time. The subject parcel does not contain any areas of special flood hazard area or floodplain. The subject parcel also does not contain any identified sinkholes. Staff's recommendation, we consider the proposed zoning map amendment or rezoning be generally consistent with the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan, consistent with the trend of development in the vicinity of the site, generally compatible with surrounding land uses, and able to be adequately served by municipal facilities should off-site easements be obtained. Based upon this analysis, performed without the benefit of evidence and testimony of a public hearing, staff does recommend the approval of this application. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Does anyone have any questions of Karen at this time?
I do.
Randy?
I'm sure this will come up in review, but the water system will be looped. Karen,
I'm sorry, the water system will be,
looped?
yes. So during the preliminary plating process, our ordinance would require looping of the water system.
Thank you.
Anything else, Randy?
No.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have questions of Karen? Hearing no one, move to the applicant. Is the applicant present? Who's the applicant, Karen?
Eric Pedersen is the representative for the Raider Trust.
Yes, I'm on right now. Trying to. There we
Okay.
go.
Talk to us.
All right. I think you read everything else pretty well there, Ransom, but this is 20 acres. We're looking to develop the first 10. It's obviously a need. The lot sizes are generally going to be a little bigger than the high density we're requesting, but there's going to be a few that are right on that line. So be on the safe side, we are looking for the high density zoning.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions of the applicant? Looks like it's your easy day today. I'm going to move to anyone else that's in favor of the application. No one coming forward. Is there anyone opposed to the application? No one coming forward. I'll close this hearing. What say ye?
Karen, I got a question.
You may.
What is the 12 Stones property? What are they doing right now? Are they going to develop that land, or what's going on?
We have not had any direct contact with the owner of 12 Stones, but it's my understanding that the project might be on hold for the meantime. They have not pulled any permits, and they haven't had any pre-application meetings with us. So with the PDD zoning, it does stay effective basically forever. So they could come in at any point and pull infrastructure permits for water, sewer, stormwater, and streets to start the construction of the development.
So if this thing goes through, we'll have to work out a deal with that development with the water line deal, or how's that going to work?
Yes, it's most likely that their only probable connection point is going to be at the east end of Timber Oak. and it will be a requirement for the developer to acquire access across 12 Stones, any necessary easements, and go ahead and do that construction. There may be alternative connections to the south that could be viable once more engineering work has been put into the project. But either way, it will require off-site improvements that will be the responsibility of the developer.
Are you good, Kevin?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions? Or comments or whatever? If not, do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
Okay, I have a motion to recommend the approval of an application to change the zoning classification of approximately 23.5 acres located in the 7500 block of West Farm Road 174 from agricultural to high-density, single-family residential. Do you hear a second?
Second.
I'll second.
I got
We'll
Randy or Kevin, flip a coin.
let Kevin go.
All right. Any discussion on the motion? Call the roll.
Mr. Phelps,
Aye.
Andrews,
Aye.
Ellis,
Aye.
Hyder,
Aye.
Han.
Aye.
Okay. Move to the next public hearing. That's ORD 20-001. Public hearing and possible vote to recommend the approval of the updated City of Republic Water Master Plan. And who's got that? Andrew?
Yes. Thank you, Ransom. Okay, so I'm gonna try to make about a year and a half's worth of work and data collection and maps and everything else we did as short as possible for everybody, but still try to hit the high points. And it's much easier to do on the first one, which is the water, because overall we're in a better position with our water system. But just to talk you through about how we developed this master plan, we started by projecting demand for our city as well as the growth. So, Chris, if you could scroll to the 6th page of that executive summary for everyone. And I want to talk about some of Chris's handiwork here. What we did was we looked at the city in the most probable areas that we thought we would see growth. And then we also weighted that growth to each area. And what that allows us to do is put not just a demand in a number for our city, but in an area as well. There you go. So what you see in that map in the lighter shaded areas is what we're predicting our 5-year growth area to look like. And then the darker colors, that would be our 20-year service area. That map and those numbers allowed us to project demand in millions of gallons per day. And that's how we plan for supply. So just to shorten it up, through 2024, from a supply perspective, our wells are sufficient enough to supply our population. In that 2024 timeframe, or in the 5-year planning timeframe, we're preparing for a 1 million gallon per day user. That would be a large industrial type user. There's no specific user that we have in mind, but we see a likelihood in some area that would facilitate a user like that. So that alone would trigger the need for an additional well in the vicinity of that user, which we would predict to be in the Brookline area. From there, it's 2038 for an additional well based on our population growth projection. So if you look at over 50 years, it's one well basically every 8 to 9 years, 6 in total in our 50-year supply plan. When you when you ask the consultant about what our groundwater supply looks like, it's very favorable. So the way we've spaced our wells and the way Republic's positioned geographically puts us in a position where adding wells is not really an issue. One well doesn't affect another well as far as drawdown. So we're in a very favorable position from that aspect. And one other supply option I want to mention, we're by no means tied to this, but we're a partner in a regional group called the Tri-State Water Coalition. And that group exists to explore the options of bringing raw water from Stockton Lake to our region. And it actually goes all the way to Joplin. So it's going to be going through our backyard, whether we're a member or not. But it's something we're keeping an eye on to see if it's going to be an economical way for us to get a supply of raw water. As far as our infrastructure goes in the water system, what we have provides the level of service that is indicative for a residential population. The area we suffer probably the most is fire flow. And what I mean by that is in certain areas, if there was a fire and we were to have the fire department hooked up, it might cause a pressure issue for some residents in that area. That's our biggest issue at the moment, along with aging infrastructure. So in the older part of town, you see a lot of ductile iron and older PVC that's not necessarily up to spec, and that causes us some issues as well. If you go, I think Chris is already there. He's probably beat me there. I'm bringing my document down so I can see it. If you look at that, it lays out capital improvement over our 20-year planning period. The red lines are development driven. So what that means is, and I'm sure you're all well aware, is that every time we approve a development, every time a plat comes through, we add additional water infrastructure to our system. So this map in the red, you're seeing new main, not necessarily service lines, but new main that would be developer driven. The blue lines are fire flow improvements. That would be replacement of either small or old mains, mostly located in the older part of town. To wrap, I couldn't fit the entire list of those improvements on a document that you could actually be able to read, but it's in the full document. If you've taken some time to go to those links where our full master plan document is, you're talking about hundreds of projects over the next 20 years for fire flow, for main replacement. And a lot of them are smaller. I don't want to project like it's a hundreds of large projects, but it's a lot of small links of main that are going to get replaced. In our five-year window, we're talking about $31.9 million of infrastructure, and 22 of that being developer driven. And we're looking at 5 to 6 million in that first 5 years if we tackle every fire flow improvement in that first 5 years. Over the 20-year planning period, we're looking at 50 million. That would include what I just mentioned in our 5-year plan, 50 million in total for the 20-year planning period, 20 of that being the city funded or replacement of infrastructure or added supply to meet demand. That's pretty much it on the water side. If there's any questions, I hope you had time to at least read the executive summary, the plan document itself. Like I said, that's hundreds of pages of information as well.
Do any of the commissioners have questions of Andrew? Is there anyone else that wishes to speak in favor of this vote? Is there anyone that wishes to speak opposed to the application? I'm going to close the hearing. Hearing no one come forward. Is there any discussion that needs to be had on this? Does anyone have a motion?
I make motion to approve.
Okay, I have a motion to approve, the recommendation for the approval of the updated City of Republic Water Master Plan. There a second?
Second.
All right. I have a second. Was that from Brandon?
Yes, sir.
All right. Any discussion on the motion? If not, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Hyder,
Aye.
Commissioner Phelps,
Aye.
Commissioner Hahn,
Aye.
Commissioner Ellis,
Aye.
Commissioner Andrews.
Aye.
You said aye. You didn't hear him, Chris. All right, that passes. We'll go to the fourth hearing. I'm going to call ORD 20-002, public hearing and possible vote to recommend the approval of the updated City of Republic wastewater master plan. I believe that's you again, Andrew.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to attack this. There's two separate systems when you talk about wastewater. So I'm going to go into collections first, but then we'll get into the treatment plan. But they're really tied together. And the master plan, you know, in a perfect world, we update these every 5 years. And I want to focus on the first 5 years of the two parts of these plans. So Republic entered with the Missouri Department of Natural Resources. We entered into a voluntary compliance agreement in 2011. And what that was we, during a rain event, we see a surcharge of stormwater into our sewer. So via illicit connections, which could be someone's downspouts or sump pump, or leaks in our system, overflow into our manholes or pipes that are broken, the stormwater actually makes it into our collection system and then makes it all the way to our treatment plant. Why that's an issue? In the older part of town, on the collection side, when that happens, we actually see manholes that won't carry the volume of water. So we have what we call sanitary sewer overflows, or manholes that are spilling water or sewage into the street or wherever they're located. So that's one issue. The second issue, and where we get into the voluntary compliance agreement, is when that water makes it all the way to the treatment plant, it does the same thing. We start to see a surcharge of water. So what we do is we bypass into our stormwater clarifier. It's a place where we can shed the excess water, allow it to do basically a settlement filtration where the cleanest water, what's on top, spills over, and then we blend that with our treated water, which is discharged directly into our spillway. That is in itself a bypass of our treatment process and a violation of our NPDES permit. So that was identified in 2011. And we entered into the voluntary compliance agreement for 5 years with the DNR, saying, okay, over the next 5 years, we're going to make attempts to eliminate the inflow and infiltration of stormwater into our system. Okay, so 2016 comes around. That's 1 or 2 years prior to me getting here. And so I don't know, I don't have a good feel for exactly what progress was made 2011 to 2016. 2016 to date, we've done some smoke testing, some minor repairs and some minor improvements, but we're not gaining like we should. So unfortunately, in a voluntary compliance agreement, you can only take that route for so long. So they gave us 1 5-year extension that gets us to October of 2021. From there, we're getting ready to enter into an administrative order with consent, which means we are voluntarily going to ask DNR to give us an administrative order that will dictate to us a very specific timeline of approved improvements. So they have to vet all of the planned improvements that we make, this master plan, to say this is how we're going to gain compliance and meet our permit. So the master plan, where it comes in on the collection side, is we used our hydraulic model to identify where sanitary sewer overflows are occurring and where it gives us a plan to find the places where illicit connections are made and where the stormwater is getting into the system. On the treatment plant side, it's an expansion of the plant to handle that surcharge of water that will, even though we're going to move it over to a stormwater clarifier, it's going to reroute it back into our treatment process, give us the volume to handle the storm while it's happening. And then as the storm recedes and the water recedes over the next several days, it'll make it through our full treatment process. That's a lot. Are there any questions about that DNR aspect of it before I go on into the capital improvements? One thing I should mention is,
anyone have any questions of Andrew on the first part?
one thing I should go
Proceed.
should talk about is on that administrative order. We just were issued our updated clean water permit. It's actually still in draft form, but they're going to issue it to us. But what could happen is if we don't meet the requirements of that administrative order, it becomes a full-on order, a violation. So we would not be allowed to add connections to our system until it was compliant. We could be assessed a fine anytime we have the illicit discharge during a stormwater event. So to give you an idea of the frequency of those events, it usually takes in a 24-hour period about an inch of rain in fairly wet conditions like this time of year. An inch of rain is probably going to trigger the bypass at the plant. So it happens fairly frequently. So going from there, using the master plan, the goal is really compliance, and it's heavy compliance in the first 5 years of planning. Most of those improvements that you'll see in the CIP are I&I reduction targeted or volume expansion at the wastewater treatment plant. And Chris, if you could pull up page 13. Hopefully everyone can see that fairly well. This is a mapped CIP showing the location of the capital improvements for the collection system. And there's one major investment that I definitely want to highlight for the commission here is the pink line that you see at the top of this map is a new force main and lift station that will take all of Brookline directly to our wastewater treatment plant. Why that's important. Right now, all of Brookline actually ends up in our Schuler Creek lift station on the south side of town. So it's pumped from Brookline north to McElhaney, hits some gravity, runs down to Schuler Creek, and then gets pumped 3 to 4 times, depending, back to the treatment plant. The growth we expect in Brookline and the demand we expect in Brookline, in order to keep sending it all the way to Schuler Creek, we would have to make improvements the entire length of that force main and that gravity system, and then all the way back to the plant. And if you're familiar with where the Schuler Creek force main goes through, it's one of our most heavily populated residential areas. So our opinion was, in the consultant's opinion, it's not really a viable path forward to keep sending a potential large demand of Brookline all the way to Schuler Creek on the south side of town. It needs its own pathway to facilitate that demand straight to our plant. Everything else you see on the collection system side is targeted I&I reduction or expansion to facilitate growth, but it's much, much more compliance and I&I reduction than it is expansion. Just to highlight that, the CIP project for the collection system is estimated at 32 million over the 20-year planning period. Moving on to the wastewater treatment plant. As I mentioned before, our current process takes runoff water into our stormwater clarifier and then blends it with our treated water and then discharges directly into our losing stream. And that's the violation of our MPDES permit. What I want to highlight here with the wastewater treatment plant and what we're doing now ahead of this administrative order is we know that we're going to have to work with DNR, and we know that we're going to apply for SRF funding or state revolving loan funding. It's the same way we paid for the plant originally 20 years ago. The state offers low interest loans for expansions, for compliance, or to facilitate growth. So we're already working on that, and that's why I bring these master plans to you now, and we're taking them to the council for adoption. They have to be adopted plans in order to qualify that. We'll follow up with bonds for that funding, but you have to do it it's almost 2 years ahead of time in order to qualify. So our deadline to get on 2022 intended use funding is March of 2021. So we're already working with the consultant, Burns & McDonnell, and the DNR to start the design process for expansion at the plant in order to qualify for that funding. So we're looking at two things: compliance and expansion to facilitate our growth. One thing we don't want to do is be compliant and then in 5 years, based on our growth, be not compliant again. So when we go and do these improvements, we're going to do them the right way. We're going to plan for our growth over the growth period, and we're going to do it in such a way that will make us compliant. If you look at the bottom of page 19, and Chris, you don't have to pull it up, it's just a number, but the total investment into the plant we're looking at is about 19.7 million. And that's probably spread out over at least 2 to 3 different projects and a 5-year period. That was a lot. Is there any questions about the plant or the collection system in particular that I can answer?
Any questions for Andrew?
I got one. I'm kind of curious.
Sure.
So with what people pay in the water bills in town, does that go into an account that helps pay for things like this, or how does that work?
Yes. So the way, and DNR will do a full audit of our rates to make sure that what we're charging, one, is enough to pay for the debt that we're about to take on. But we just expired the debt a couple of years ahead of time for the wastewater treatment plant, the original expansion. So we're no longer paying that debt service in 2020. So what we're doing is taking that what we would normally pay in a loan payment, and we're starting to build a cash position for this plant expansion. So on the front end, I just actually received the design fees for all of this expansion. It's about $2 million. And we're trying to look at a way that we can just pay for that up front, and that would come off of the total of the 19.7. But yes, to answer that question shortly, what's in the rates today is meant to fund these improvements.
So, this is Mr. Phelps. probably more of a question for city council, but you don't anticipate any sewer rate increases for the general taxpayer, or you do?
I don't.
DNR looking at it.
Looking at where we are and the funds I anticipate from our debt expiring, I don't see it. But like I said, we'll do a full audit of the rates to make sure we have enough funds to pay that debt service and to make sure that we're not charging too much. I would say on the water side, just looking at a preliminary look, and it's easier. So I think in 2017, we actually split the funds and we run the two different departments with each department's revenue. So if you look at the water rates, they're funding the department and the operation, but they're really not funding any capital expansion. On the wastewater side, we're in a much better position because we expired that debt.
Well, I mean, it's a pointed question. As we grow, we have to swallow the pill and the debt that comes along with growth.
Sure. And I'll say, you know, when Garrett and I did a very brief rate study for the water side, it's something we were looking at a little bit closer because we know it's a little bit tighter on the water side than the sewer. But just looking at us regionally, I know it's been somewhat of a moniker over the last several years. You know, Republic's rates are crazy high, but looking at the region, we're actually not the highest by any means. We land somewhere in the middle. So I think it was high at one time. We finally probably caught back up to what's more acceptable, but we land somewhere in the middle of our surrounding community.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Andrew?
Andrew, are there a way to do these projects without more debt for the city, or how does that work?
There's really not. For what we have to do at the treatment plant, it's just an amount of money that we probably can't. You know, right now we're going to generate about, since we're not paying this debt service, we're going to have about 1 million each year for capital expansion. But you know, we can't really delay any on compliance aspect of this. So if you ask me, could we reduce the amount of debt? Probably. But my opinion would be if we do that, we're gonna find ourselves in the same boat every 2 to 5 years.
Right.
You know, we need another $5 million expansion. You know, 5 more years, we need another $5 million. And that over time, it's cheaper up front, but over time, had we done it all at once, just the economy of scale of having one project, you know, one contractor, it probably saves us quite a bit of money. Now, there's some talk in the background with the COVID stimulus packages that are out there. There's some talk in the background of phase 4 or 5 or whichever one they come up with next may have some infrastructure money in it. And the first thing they look at are water and wastewater, especially on a compliance side. So there may be some potential for some grant money, which is not free, but it's better.
Andrew, do you want to talk about the interest rates from the revolving fund?
They are typically I believe 1/3 of prime. I want to say we were the last that they mentioned to us, it was sitting below 1%. Does that sound right, Garrett?
Yeah, they sit really low compared to like if one of us was to try and go get a loan. So over 10 years, it's not a bad investment just to go ahead and get the projects done at that rate.
Yeah. The amount of interest we would pay with those low interest loans is probably less than or, we would save that much money by executing it in today's dollars versus 10 years from now, even probably.
Any other questions? Hear a motion?
I make motion to approve.
Yeah, I have a motion to recommend the approval of an application for, whoops, wrong one. A possible vote to recommend the approval of the updated City of Republic wastewater master plan. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Cynthia. Any
Yes.
discussion on the motion? Chris, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Andrews,
Aye.
Commissioner Phelps,
Aye.
Commissioner Hahn,
Aye.
Commissioner Ellis,
Aye.
Commissioner Hyder.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. Move to other business. Sub D pre 20-002, possible vote to recommend the approval of an application for a preliminary plat for Old Savannah, a residential subdivision consisting of approximately 24.48 acres located at the 6300 block of South Farm Road 89. Who has this?
I do.
Okay, Karen?
Thank you, Chairman. Stephen McElhaney, the property owner in Old Savannah LLC, have requested the review and approval of preliminary plat for approximately 24.48 acres. Subdivision known as Old Savannah, consisting of 81 residential lots, zoned high-density, single-family residential, associated streets, and infrastructure. Staff and the technical review team have reviewed the preliminary plat for compliance with the following criteria listed in your staff report. We've also looked for compliance with the review criteria of preliminary plats. The reference preliminary plat contains 81 single-family high-density residential lots with a minimum lot size of 7,000 square feet. It consists of streets, open space, and detention areas. The preliminary plat of Old Savannah contains lots with an average size of 8,890 square feet. The preliminary plat proposes one new local street connection to South Farm Road 89, connection to New Madrid Street in the Lakes at Schuler Ridge subdivision, and 4 new connections to undeveloped properties, both to the north and south of the reference property. The new public streets internal to the subdivision will include approximately 4,917 feet of street and sidewalk, which will be dedicated to the city during the final platting process. Sufficient right-of-way along South Farm Road 89 will be dedicated to the city also during the final platting process. A traffic impact study was completed by the applicant and reviewed by the city during rezoning. The report indicated no major improvements were needed to the city's existing transportation systems to accommodate the increase in traffic generated by the proposed development. The reference parcel is not currently connected to municipal utilities. Development of the property will require connection to the city's water and sanitary sewer systems. The development will be served through a looped water system with connections to an 8-inch water main located at the termination of New Madrid Street in the Lakes at Schuler Ridge, and to a 10-inch water main located near the intersection of Hickory Street and South Farm Road 89. The development will connect to an existing 18-inch sewer main located on East New Madrid Street. The sanitary sewer system flows to the Schuler Creek lift station before traveling through a force main back to the wastewater treatment facility. Both the water and sewer system currently have the capacity to serve potential development at this location. As far as compliance with our zoning code, the preliminary plat platted for construction of 81 single-family lots. The subject parcel does not contain any special flood hazard areas or floodplain areas. The subject parcel does not contain any identified sinkholes. The preliminary plat contains a stormwater detention area in the mid-eastern and northern portions of the property, designed to control the release of stormwater from the development. The plat contains a conceptual layout of the detention area. The area itself will be designed to mitigate existing conditions to reduce the amount of post-development flows to less than pre-development flows. The stormwater detention area's outflow will flow onto adjacent property to the north. A stormwater report will be reviewed by the TRT during infrastructure design review. And finally, the stormwater detention area and all open space and common area will be maintained by a homeowners association. As with all subdivisions, the design of the streets, sidewalks, water and sanitary sewer systems, and stormwater detention will be reviewed and permitted during the infrastructure permitting process. Staff does consider the proposed preliminary plat to be in general conformity with the requirements for preliminary plats, and we are recommending approval of the application.
We have any discussion? I have a question. Did I hear you say that the detention areas were going to be deeded over to the city?
The detention area will be maintained by a homeowners association during final
Okay.
plotting.
Okay, I heard you wrong. Good. You going to weigh in, John?
I can if you'd like.
Well-
Yes. This
Okay.
development will likely be done in 2 phases. And we still have yet, just so you all know, I don't see Mike. Mike's not on, doesn't look like he's in the participants list. We're still working with Mike, and then that will be also in concert with our discussion, probably with Mr. Brickner. Garrett, you're probably going to get a chance to weigh in on how we phase this too. So we do need the sewer from the lakes at Chula Ridge. So I presume we're going to start from the east and work our way west. So but I don't know the phasing. That's the bottom line. We do have an existing pond on the property that I would prefer to, and that's shown as one of the detention areas. I would like to try and keep a permanent pond amenity there and then work the detention over the top, and then the primary basin be the one on the north end, but we'll see how that all plays out. You'll get waterline loop as a result of this. You'll get Lakes at Chula Ridge gets another access point by virtue of default through New Madrid over west of Farm Road 89. So that should help access in a couple of regards, even from them. They can not have to go to the roundabout and work their way back around or walk over to Farm Road 89. So
that'll take some pressure off of Lynn Street.
well, Lynn will see where everything goes, sir. It could, I guess, if people want to work back and forth through the development. I'm just thinking that right now the Lakes people have to go out to that roundabout, and then if they're going back into town, they got to work their way back up through Lynn Street again. So I'm not quite sure, but traffic numbers by the traffic study were still pretty well within reason for the condition of the Lynn Street being a farm road. So.
Okay.
I don't think anything else unusual. The lots are, I don't know, was 8,000 plus usual, even though this was rezoned for the R1H designation, which produces a minimum of 7,000 square foot. So we are not trying to, we're jamming them. I mean, because that's why you get R1H in there, but we're not really jamming them because it didn't make sense to do that adjacent to the Lakes at Chula Ridge and as really the lots laid out, that the lay of the land kind of dictates how your lot sizes are going to go for the most part. So these will, while they're R1H zones, they may not necessarily feel like R1H type lots. So.
Anybody else? I hear a motion.
I make motion to approve.
Be a motion to recommend the approval of the application of preliminary plat for old OLDE Savannah, a residential subdivision consisting of approximately 24.48 acres located at the 6300 block of South Farm Road 89. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second.
All right, got a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, or call the roll, sorry. Got ahead of myself.
Commissioner Ellis,
Aye.
Commissioner Phelps,
Aye.
Commissioner Hahn,
Aye.
Commissioner Hyder,
Aye.
Commissioner Andrews.
Aye.
Okay. We good on that? We'll move to citizen participation. Any citizens that are online who wish to speak to us about a matter other than one that we've just taken care of in a public hearing can feel free to hop on and tell us what they want to tell us. No one hopping on, so we'll move to the next item of business, Community Development Department update.
Thank you, Chairman. We don't have any updates tonight for community development or for the comprehensive plan project. We do hope to have both for you next month. I would like to remind everyone, all the commissioners, to please fill out your findings of fact and either drop them off here at our office or drop them in the mail tomorrow so that we can get them to City Council for next Tuesday's meeting. You can also email them to me if you have the ability to scan, but make sure that you do that tonight or first thing in the morning. And finally, we will have a meeting in June. We are not sure if the meeting will be via Zoom or in person. It very well likely may be another Zoom meeting, but we'll let you know as those decisions are made. And thank you all for joining us tonight.
All right.
That's all I have.
Did you say that we are not having a comprehensive plan update either?
Correct. We hope to have a full project update for you sometime early summer, hopefully in the June meeting. We'll have that.
Right, great. Do I hear a motion to adjourn then?
Motion to adjourn.
Mr. Andrews. So moved. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second.
No, flip a coin.
I give it to Kevin.
Throw rock, paper, scissors. We'll figure out which way.
There you go.
So they can have it.
Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Andrews,
Here. Aye. Aye.
Commissioner Hahn,
Aye.
Commissioner Ellis,
Aye.
Commissioner Hyder,
Aye.
Commissioner Phelps.
Aye.
We're done.
Good night.
Great. Thanks.
Everyone,
Okay.
See ya.
Went well.
Stay well.
Me too.
Yep.
Bye.
Stay away from it.
thank you.